Hey folks, Dale Davidson here, the Dear VA guy. Thank you for tuning in today. Got something special for today. We're talking about the VA has now become a debt collector. So you may have received a letter like this, okay? And it's from the Department of Veterans Affairs Debt Management Center. So what's happening is the VA is saying, hey, look, guess what? We made a mistake. You've been overpaid, and so we want our money back. So if not, then we're going to just stop your benefits. You may or may not have received this letter. If you haven't, keep watching, because the chances are that someone you know will or already has received such a letter, and so you can tell them about this video. But hey, I promise you'll learn something. So you served in the Army or Air Force, Navy, Marines, Coast Guard, whatever, wherever you served, you or your spouse, and now you're getting kicked in the teeth by the VA, the Debt Management Center. So more likely than not, you're retired, living on a fixed income, and today's economy, you're just scraping by. So what do you do if you get one of these letters? Okay? Thank goodness the VA has given you some options, okay? None of them are good, okay? So before we go on to those options, let me just discuss that there are basically two types of income that the VA would pay a veteran or a veteran spouse. There's compensation to the veteran. Remember, compensation is an in-service or in-service connected injury. Maybe you were wounded in service, or you were exposed to some kind of toxic chemicals or agents while in service and contracted some kind of cancer. Okay, so that's compensation. It's like workers' compensation in the private sector. And then your spouses and dependents, if you're deceased, would receive disability income compensation. We call that DIC. But DIC is for spouses and dependents, okay, of a deceased veteran. And then there's VA aid and attendance, also called the VA pension. And mainly these debt letters are mainly geared towards the VA pension, the VA aid and attendance. Recall that compensation or VA pension is a means-based test, meaning you can't make too much income and you can't have too many assets, okay? Whereas the compensation or DIC is not means-based. So VA pension, you have income limits and you have asset limits. Compensation and DIC, you do not. So regardless of whether you're receiving compensation or pension, you or your spouse served and you paid your dues, but now comes the kicker. So according to the VA, you owe your country thousands of dollars because for some reason you were overpaid. So the VA made a mistake in initially calculating your benefit and paid you the incorrect benefit for many years. Now the VA has determined that they made this mistake and they want their money back. Basically, the VA doesn't care. They are the government, by the way, okay? So guess what? Many of these veterans, because you live on a fixed income, and you and your spouse, you can't afford it. You don't have the assets to pay the money back. So the VA doesn't care that you owe the money back, okay? They're going to say, look, we're going to take it out of your check, or maybe they'll take just part of it, maybe they'll take your whole check until you pay it back, whatever they say you owe. Again, you're on a fixed income, everything's costing you more, groceries are up 3%, gas is up almost 9%, it's cold outside, and your fuel oil bill is almost 25% higher than it was last year. So where does all of this go? I mean, what's happening here? I mean, everything costs more, and now the VA wants money that they say they incorrectly paid you. So it's frustrating for me because I help all these veterans and their spouses to witness what the VA is doing to them. I mean, these are my folks, okay? These people are just trying to survive, and now the VA is going to cut their check, putting these folks in a position of having to decide between groceries and heat, or worse, medicine and food. I mean, you're taking away people's abilities to afford the basic necessities. I mean, say you're getting a DIC check for $2,500 and they cut your check by $500. That's a lot. That's a lot of money, okay? So we already have over 37,000 homeless veterans, with approximately 15,000 without any shelter at all. Think about that. 15,000 veterans are on the street. They don't have a roof over their head. That is sad. So it's frustrating, and I get very angry about how the government is treating these folks. So I'm going to give you a couple of real-world examples of exactly what is happening here. My first case is a U.S. Air Force serviceman who was stationed in Japan. I think he was a radio operator, radio man, something like that, during the Vietnam War. So he wasn't in Vietnam. So we filed a notice of intent to file on April 22nd of 2022, and we filed his application about a month later in May. Okay. At this time, he was 85 years old. We filed his application, and then almost a year to the day, he was awarded the maximum pension amount. Don't know why it took so long. I mean, this guy had no assets, and his income was close to zero. His wife was deceased, but he has a disabled son. Well, you would think that that's the end of this story, that he was a happy end and well. No, it's not, okay? So the VA has come back this year and claimed that they overpaid this veteran, citing an increase in his Social Security benefit and a reduction in his Medicare Part A. I agree that he received a cost of living increase in his Social Security, and I agree that his Medicare Part A was reduced, okay? But if you look at all of his unreimbursed medical expenses, his income is still basically zero. But the VA didn't even bother to look at that. If they would have looked back in the file, they would have seen that his unreimbursed medical expenses still exceeded his income, resulting in income for VA purposes of $0. So now this veteran is stressed out. Losing any part of his pension is devastating because he was living check to check. He was living benefit check to benefit check. Again, 85-year-old, now 86, with a disabled son. So tell me, folks, how would you react if you were 85 or 86 years old in this guy's position if you received such a letter? Let me know in the comments. Now, here comes our second veteran. Been knowing this gentleman for 7 or 8 years now, and helped him out. So he got this letter, a letter just like this, and the VA demanded $162,000. At that time, he was 90 years old, okay? Now, he's worried that the VA is going to take everything he has. So we filed for pension back in August of 2018. He lost his wife several years back. He can't drive and requires the assistance of a live-in caregiver. So we submitted everything to the VA, including caregiver expenses, logs, affidavits, all of that. He was initially denied. We did a appeal and a higher level review appeal, and he was granted the full pension. So all was well, and he's getting along, and then bam, here comes this debt collection letter. Okay. Dear veteran, we've determined that you were overpaid $162,000 and we want our money back. If you can't pay it at once, don't worry. We can accept installments. Oh, by the way, we're going to go ahead and assume that your debt is valid. So we're going to reduce your maximum pension to $237 from the $2,200 he was receiving. So here again, you're guilty until proven innocent. Oops, wrong video. That's the IRS. You're guilty until you prove your innocence. So, but in this case, the VA says that your debt is presumed valid until you your debt is presumed valid until you prove otherwise. Sorry about the tongue twisting. So, again, put yourself in the position of this 90-year-old veteran. He served honorably. And the VA states that, hey, we're sorry for the inconvenience. If you don't act, they'll refer your debt to the Department of Treasury, and they're going to add an additional 30% to your debt. Wow. Just keep piling it on, why don't you? So the burden is now on my 90-year-old client to prove that he doesn't owe the debt. Now remember, we've already submitted everything that the VA required. Caregiver logs, bank statements, all of the financial information that they wanted, roughly 250 pages, okay? They denied, we appealed. On appeal, the higher level review appeal, he was approved for the maximum benefit. So the burden now is, because they're assuming or presuming that that is valid, that now we've got to go back and prove that he doesn't. So I'm quite sure that this is stressing him out and his family out. Yeah. I mean, this is ridiculous. Through no fault of this veteran, or really any veteran, I mean, you get your award and you're thinking, wow, that's great. The VA calculated my award, but now they've come back and said, oh, we made a mistake. So we want our money back. So when you get these letters, the VA has graciously given you 5 choices, none of which are ideal because of the stress and costs associated with the choice. You can enter into a payment plan. Okay? In this case, the VA just said, well, we're going to take your $2,000 maximum pension rate and reduce it to $237. So they've really already just made that for him. Despite the fact that he is on a fixed income also. He lost his wife, so it's just him, but he still has to live. He's 90 years old. You could dispute the debt. So in order to dispute the debt, you have to submit what they refer to as a financial status report, telling the VA what you make and what you have. This is the income I make, whether it be wages, Social Security, whatever it is, and this is what I have in the bank. These are my expenses, okay? Now, you also have to explain the VA's error and provide supporting documentation. Question. And this is sarcastic, by the way. How do you explain to the VA that they made an error and provide documentation when you have presumed that their calculation was correct and you've already provided all the documentation because they awarded you the maximum benefit, or they awarded you the benefit? So how do you argue that there's an error? You just say, well, the VA's wrong, but what excuse, what reasons do you have to give them? It's a difficult thing to answer. Number 3, so you could request a waiver because of a hardship, or you can't pay because of extenuating circumstances. Now, in this veteran's case, we could have said, hey, this is all the income he gets. We have extenuating circumstances, or it's hardship. We can't pay. But what happened was the VA went ahead and reduced his pension anyway. Without, this is before we were even able to respond to the letter. So if you're supposed to tell the VA why you should not be held liable, what are you going to say? Okay, I can't pay because I don't have the money or assets. Oh, in this case, they said, okay, you don't have the means, no problem, but we're reducing your pension benefit. So they're in this case, they're forcing an installment payment on my veteran. Remember, he's on fixed income. You could, just like a tax debt, compromise, offer a lump sum for less than what the VA says you owe. But where's the lump sum going to come from? If you're living check to check and you don't have savings because you've used your savings to live off of, where's that lump sum going to come from? Family? But if you have to use your savings, then you don't have any emergency fund anymore. So therefore, what happens if you have an emergency medical issue, but now you don't have money to pay for that? You see the position the VA is putting these veterans in, and it's sad. So the fifth way the VA gives you to respond is that you can appeal. You can appeal to the VA. So think about this. You're appealing to the people who say you owe the debt, asking them to waive the debt or say, hey, I'm appealing the debt because I don't owe it for whatever reason you can think of. Look, it's not your fault. It's not these veterans' faults that the VA incorrectly calculated their pension, but now the burden is on them to prove their innocence. Again, the debt is, in the eyes of the VA, the debt is valid until you prove otherwise. Now, this is just a bunch of bull. So, love to hear from you on this. If you're angry about it, as angry as I am, hey, write your senators or write your House of Representative and just let them know exactly how you feel. Just give them the what for, okay? So, hey folks, thank you for watching this video. I know it's kind of emotionally charged. I'm very passionate about my veterans and their spouses. But hey, check out this video on the VA's most ridiculous letters and see for yourself just how the VA treats veterans and their spouses. So until next time, be blessed.